All right, we're here at Beaver Creek with Terry Lynch. How you doing, man? Power nickel. I like to call it power polymetallics. You've changed the game for polymetallics in North America.
Yeah, it's exciting what we're doing.
It's a big deal. So Terry and I were talking earlier. When I first chatted, and he mentioned what this is and the opportunity of polymetallics. It's a big deal, right? And
the world's best mines.
Exactly. So, well, let's rewind a bit, right? So this really all came together because of the Nisk discovery, right?
100%, yeah.
And so maybe you can help us understand, how it came about and just how it just really got to this level, right?
So about 3 or 4 years ago, we came across this project called Nisk. It was a high-grade nickel sulfide with a historical resource, 3.1 million tons, 1.5%. Hadn't had a lot of drilling, so it looked to us like it was pretty, had some exploration upside. And we bought it, bought 80%, and critical elements was the other 20. We now own the property in terms of we're the operator and have the claims, etc. So we started drilling on the nickel, and it was all based on ultramafic rock formation. So when we got the property, we staked it and, mapped it, and we noted that there was another ultramafic outcrop about 5.5 kilometers to the northeast. As we expanded the nickel sulfide to 7.1 million tons, 43,101, and it's probably 8.5 or so now. We went looking for more nickel sulfide, honestly, and we had a ultramafic rock at surface, and they had a nice EM anomaly, electromagnetic anomaly. So we drilled it last hole of the year. At 60 meters, we hit the massive sulfides, and we know that, wow, bingo. This is, so it was
polymetallic payload.
And it was like the guys were texting saying, hey, we've really got something. So it was, 8 meters of 1 ounce PGMs, 1.5% copper, and that is like a hot hole. But that's not even a top 5 hole.
Right.
So we started the story there, and then we went back in January of this year, and we drilled 16 holes. 15 of the 16 hit, and more than half of them were like 10 meters, 10% copper equivalents, like as good as it gets, really, in the history of time. So it was amazing stuff.
It's incredible, and these are rare, right?
Super rare. Honestly, we didn't know what we had, and then my son actually watched this interview with a guy named Dr. Steve Beresford, who we'll come back to in a second, but he used to be chief geo at First Quantum, and then he went to MMG and IGO. So he's had like a series of hits. He's probably, if he's not the top polymetallic guy in the world, scientifically, he's in that conversation.
Right.
And so he had this video out that's pretty cool. We'll link to it. And talking about his hunt for the next giant polymetallic. And my son had seen it, and he's in mid-twits, and he sort of saw it. And he said, Dad, you should check this out. He says, he's talking about us, but he obviously doesn't know us. So get a hold of the guy. So it's like, as if, right? But, God bless him. I reached out through LinkedIn. And generally I've been like, LinkedIn, I get harassed by people trying to give me loan deals.
That's right.
But he got back to me, and we started a conversation. And then obviously when we got plugged in January and started to hit all these great holes, I said, Steve, look, I think this is what you're looking for, and we could sure use the help, because while my guys did a great job finding it, exploring a polymetallic is a different animal, or we'd certainly like your help. So he got him to come as a technical advisor. He got on the plane, came across, and he went up to the site, and he was just blown away with what we had up there, and he came across this kumatite lava. I probably butchered the name. The geos will be freaking at me.
Right.
But anyway, it's super rare. Shouldn't have been there, but it was there, and those things are associated with massive nickel sulfide discoveries. He was just super excited about that, and we ended up mutually deciding he should stick around. He joined the board, and he's our...
Oh, he's on the board as well?
Yeah, board, and he's our senior technical advisor now to the team. Just a great guy.
That is a really, so you got somebody who's dedicated his entire life to the
and I didn't know him from Adam. So this is strictly on the project merits, right?
That's incredible. So he's on board. He's Dr. Polymetallic for all intents and purposes,
more
right?
Or less,
Dr. Polymetallic. Now, the other part too is so these giants are rare, but they're very prolific and they're very valuable, right? So could you talk about A, how valuable they are, and B, so how would you think about what do polymetallics bring to say a nickel cost curve, right? It's valuable.
Okay.
Right?
So when I was going through the trying to do an analog for Steve, Dr. Beresford, I said it's not like Voisey Bay because we got precious metals.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like this other gold project we were looking at because while it had copper, it didn't have the nickel and the PGMs. So he said, no, I get what it's like. I'm saying, okay, so what's it like? He says it's like Norilsk. I'm like, I nearly fell off my chair, and I'm saying, boy, I wished I had that on tape. He ultimately did say it in an interview, so it's all good, okay.
Right.
So he said, look, I'm not saying you're going to be the next Norilsk, but if you were to find the next Norilsk, it would start like this. And Norilsk, for those that don't know, is the only mine in the world, in the history of the world, that's ever had $1 trillion worth of in situ value.
Jeez.
So it is absolutely a beast.
Yeah.
So he asked me, he said, Terry,
how long's Norilsk been going? Like
70 years?
70 years.
Yeah.
Like,
so he asked me, he said, how many ounces of gold do you think Norilsk has produced? And I said, I didn't know. I thought it was nickel and palladium.
Yeah.
He said, no. He said, they have 15 producing minerals, and they produce 20 million ounces of gold.
Jeez.
So these things can be monstrous. Other examples, obviously, one of our big shareholders now, Robert Friedland, and
right. Well, so you brought on Steve Beresford, Dr. Polymetallic,
yeah.
And so clearly you're hitting incredible drill holes, and then you get on two of the luminaries in the industry for investors.
Yeah. So obviously with Ivanhoe, they have Platreef in South Africa, and that's a giant polymetallic and a super valuable one. And so he's obviously clued in that this is the way to go.
So Friedland understands.
Yeah, the value of that.
The value of that.
Yeah. So when I met him, he was already a small shareholder, and then when I met him in New York, he pretty interesting guy. He's obviously super, amazingly successful guy. So it's like, talking to this guy, and you're talking to a legend. Yeah. And he says straight in the eye, he says, well, these results really are incredible. I've never seen copper holes like this, especially with PGMs. Yeah. So, I mean, that guy's seen more copper holes than most.
Yeah, of course.
So, and he says, so one or two things happened. He said either you salted the cores or it's a duck-billed platypus, straight face, And then I started laughing, and then he started laughing. He says, I know you didn't salt the cores. I know you don't even touch them. You wouldn't be here, but I thought it was the case. But he said, what's happened here is this shouldn't have happened. There's nowhere in the world where this PGMs and copper are like this. So he says, when he said, in my life, in the mining sector, when the very unusual and almost impossible happens, and it does happen, that's when you want to play. So that's sort of what was really a big part of him coming about, and I think Dr. Beresford as well.
And so remind me, how many paying metals do you think you'll have from this slide?
Steve thinks it'll be 11. We'll see.
So copper.
Well,
run them down.
So Steve has this philosophy on what he calls orthomagmatic deposits.
Okay.
And he has almost like a triangle. It's actually, if you look at our pitch deck on the website, it's there. And you have nickel in one corner, copper in the other corner, and the noble metals, which is basically platinum group elements and gold and copper on the top. Right. And so various deposits will have more or less. He expects ours to probably be roughly a third. Yeah. And then there'll be other minerals in there as well. There'll be other platinum group elements, not just platinum and palladium, but other rhodium and other things we think. So we'll see. We're yet to validate all this, but we're obviously off to a hell of a start.
Well, and about that hell of a start, you've had a summer drilling campaign that's been incredibly successful. You've expanded the line zone in Nisk by 50%. Yeah. Just talk about the importance of what the drill holes you've hit already.
So it's interesting. We had two objectives this summer. One was to expand the line zone, which we obviously have done by 50%, and we released, with that release, 7 core pictures. We've released 9 core pictures over the last couple of years. When we release a core picture, we're 9 for 9 on hot assays. So at some point you think the market would recognize, but no. But anyway, we're still okay. Well, we release it because we feel like we're in possession of material news, and we want to get that out because we don't want to be holding that back. So we get it out there, and then those assays will start to come in end of September, and then we'll see. So that was one objective. So obviously we've moved well along those lines. Second objective was Dr. Beresford. He was very frank. He said, "Look, you're now capitalized to do this thing right." He said, with Polymetallics, you've been good, but you've also been lucky. Yep. He said, you guys did the right things, but he said with these shoots, these very intense copper sulfide shoots, what'll happen is they'll be super intense, and all of a sudden, for 50 meters, you got nothing. And right. Is it over? Is that the end of it? And he says, generally not. Yeah. Generally, it's down and to the left or down and to the right, or he says. But the challenge is if you're trying to find that by drill bit, you're going to go broke. So he says what he's learned in his $300 million worth of spending money drilling polymetallics.
300 million you haven't spent.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why we hire smart people and listen to them. You know, so it's like, he says, look, the way to do it is do the downhole EM. So we drilled 4,000 meter downhole EM holes, you know, dry holes. So not cheap, like over $1 million. You know, so you know, as a poor junior miner, you're throwing that money around like a manhole covers.
Yeah.
But it's like you do that because you gotta put the money down to get up. You know, so
of course.
So we basically feel that we'll identify the extensions to the line zone, and allow us to obviously bring those in and other line zones. His feeling is that these things don't happen as onesies. These silos, these chutes. He says, generally speaking, we would look to have, you know, we'll have ones that are more. We have one obviously copper centric. We'll have one that's precious metal centric, one that's PGE centric. He predicts we'll have one that's zinc centric. And he says, you know, we'll have multiples of these, and they're going to be, you know, like again, from a rock value in the ground in situ is, you know, $800,000 a ton. You know, this is like crazy stuff. You know, and it's obviously, you know, to the extent that one can get these and delineate them, that becomes your pay dirt. Because he says, in his mind, the fact is that right now we have the nickel sulfide, which is 5.5 kilometers sort of to the left in the sort of southwest, and then we've got this, you know, line zone, which is the copper sulfide in the northeast. He believes they're connected subsurface. So that's obviously a big strike length, but he says not for polymetallics. They can have 10, 20 kilometer strike lengths. So yeah, so obviously we've got that's an interesting package, and he says that's most likely. Second possibility is that there's another nickel sulfide that's underneath the line zone that's not yet been found. Because the general theory is that we have high-grade nickel in the line zone as well. And he says what happened is that, and it happens in other polymetallics, this is why he speaks to it, is that you've got probably some hydrothermal action that brought the copper sulfide to the surface, precipitated it, and that's, you know, was trapped between these two plates. And because it kept on pulsing, you had the high concentration and the high grade.
Got it.
So he says that'll happen. And he says what'll pay to get you down to this nickel sulfide, which might be 500 meters down, maybe 750 meters down, how you get there cost effectively is finding these chutes.
Right.
So this is the whole math.
And this is the reason you brought Steve Beresford on, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, because you got to get the most efficient way to get down to these chutes, right?
When you're a junior miner, you better be efficient with your capital spend, or you're going to not be around long.
Absolutely. Now, successful summer drilling campaign. You got a winter drilling campaign on top. Talk about the catalyst ahead.
So obviously in the short term, we're finishing off. We have one more hole to do before September 15th, when we shut down for a month for Moose Break. Then we'll start back up October 15th, continuing to expand. The data that we've collected on the downhole EM and the gravity and all this other scientific information that we've put together will probably be processed and ready to go and start to influence our drilling decisions by, end of October, early November. We have a 30,000 meter campaign that's fully funded from now until the end of April. So we'll be going hardcore. So
fantastic.
So we got lots of catalysts to do on the drilling side. We've got some on the business development side. A couple of things we're spinning out our copper gold exploration plays that are in Chile and BC in the Golden Triangle. Nice little package that'll go to our shareholders October 30th and can probably be completed in November.
Fantastic.
And then we've been doing a feasibility study on the nickel sulfide project called Nisk, but with a company called CVMR.
Yep.
And that'll be out before the end of the month, and we think that'll show some serious potential to build a nickel refinery with them and sell the powders to the EV armaments and 3D printing market.
Yeah, geez. Terry, this is a fantastic breakdown of our polymetallics, our nickel, right? It's very exciting. So you got a spin-off, you got lots of catalysts. Terry, thank you very much.
Great to be here, Thomas.
A pleasure. We're at the Beaver Creek. Boom, boom.